Hi there, and welcome to another YouTube interview. Before I start, I've had a few comments on a previous video I did with Ivor Cummins, and had comments about the fact that I put subtitles on. Now, for those that don't know, I'm deaf, I lip read, and I rely on subtitles. And I've been relying on subtitles for the last 45 years, okay? So I've missed out on a lot of videos and films, and even people like Amazon Prime, even now, they'll put a film up and they won't include subtitles. So as a deaf person, I put subtitles on. I don't employ anyone else to do my videos, so I can't do different versions for different platforms. Some platforms like Rumble don't add subtitles. So I always add subtitles. The benefit for you as a viewer is when someone says the word carnivore, it says carnivore rather than carnivore, because AI doesn't pick up all the words properly. Now, with a little bit of tongue in cheek, also, if you don't understand people with an accent, it helps. All right. So that brings me around to my fabulous guest today, who is a proud Scot, and he's going to talk about his journey. So I'm going to now ask the question I ask absolutely everybody. Hey, Simon, why did you become carnivore?
Well, Stephen, it's great to see you again. Our conversations usually aren't on screen, so it's nice to be in this place with you. My story is the story of many people. It's not unusual, but it's a great example of what can be achieved if you make some changes and take some action in your life. I wasn't actually born Scottish. My dad's working in South London when I was born, so much I'll never forgive them for that. I am Scottish by blood, if not by birth. So I was brought up mostly at a small town called Carnivore in Scotland, famous for rock. Two types, the Sweet and lead singer of AC/DC, and J.M. Barrie. David Niven even I think was born there. I was quite shy, retiring child, wasn't really that confident. Left school, went to Australia for a year, worked on a sheep station as a jackaroo, and I grew up very quickly. Learned how to work hard, learned many skills that have stood me in good stead through the rest of my life. Funnily enough, into carnivore diet, which we can go into a little bit later. My history from a health point of view has been 20 to 30 years worth of migraines every couple of weeks, long-term IBS type symptoms, never diagnosed, but I know what it looks like, I know what it feels like. Arthritis following injuries when I was a teenager with fractures in the legs, and just general low energy. My partner's Hungarian, and she grew up in a very traditional way where people grew all their own vegetables and fruit, and they kept their own pigs and chickens. A big community feel over there, so a couple of times a year the whole community get together and kill pigs for each other, and that was the meat for the winter. Very big pork eaters over there. She wanted to recreate her childhood here, and we managed to rent about 1/4 of an acre, and we produce and grow our own birds, so chickens, ducks, guinea fowls and turkeys. So we have unlimited eggs. We eat our own poultry, so we know what gets into them and we know where it comes from, which is actually really important when you're talking about food origin and where it actually comes from. Going back to the health problems, we've experimented with many things over time, vegetarianism, raw veganism, and we eventually came around to carnivore, which was a bit of a journey. Now, Mellie's a philosopher and a teacher, and our youngest son is autistic. So we decided to home educate him. And all the changes we've brought about in our life have been mostly to give him the best possible upbringing that he can, allow him to achieve everything that he wants to, and just to keep him as healthy as we can. So it's been a big experiment all the way through, not only with ourselves, but with himself. Now, for a lot of people in life, your personal life tends to mirror in your business life, and that's certainly been the case for me. I qualified as a physiotherapist almost 30 years ago, and probably 10 years ago qualified as a hypnotherapist, and more recently as a GAPS nutritionist. And the reasons for that are that what I've learned in my personal life and working with clients, because it's roughly 40,000 clients I've treated in the last 30 odd years as a physio. And when you talk to people, you tend to find out about them. And one of the privileges of being a physio is that you are allowed within somebody's personal space quite quickly, and they then have permission to tell you everything about themselves, and they do. And all people who get close to others in their jobs, like hairdressers and massage therapists, etc., will have experienced this. People just tell you about themselves. It's a safe place where there's no judgment and there's a contract of trust. So people just offload most of the worries, their fears, their health issues. And there were trends started to appear over those times, just with speaking to all sorts of different people. And everybody's got a story, so everybody's interesting. to a certain expect. And as long as you realise we can learn things from everybody, then it's always an interesting experience. So the trends I found over that time were that anxiety and depression were the norm for many people. Often who have chronic pain, that went hand in hand. Also digestive issues were very common for people who have chronic pain and depression and anxiety. They all seem to mix in together. So the first eureka or light bulb moment I had really was the fact that psychology and pain are very linked, and that's the reason I trained as a hypnotherapist. And I was very lucky to a friend of a friend, who's a guy called Bob Burns, fantastic hypnotherapist, taught me so much over the years. And the fact that you can change your body with your thoughts is just an absolutely phenomenal power, really. That's where placebo comes in. Is it an actual thing? If you believe something strongly enough, you can actually change your own physiology, your own body, and right down to genetic expression. And that's where epigenetics comes from. So I started practicing as a hypnotherapist, found it was really beneficial for people in pain, allowed them to dial down the level of pain that they had, and also produce some healing effects. So I've treated people with things like peripheral neuropathy and actually cleared it in 2 or 3 sessions of hypnosis, because your subconscious is an extremely powerful thing. And if you give enough detailed instructions, it will do everything it can to give you what you ask for. And we actually ask our subconscious what to do all day, every day, with how we think about ourselves and how we speak about ourselves to others. So language is extremely important. The power of words can't be dumbed down. We are in charge of our own life and we make our own choices all the time. So that went on. I started having some really good effects with that in relation to the physio. And then the other thing came into my consciousness, which was the digestive problems. So many people have IBS type symptoms, Crohn's disease, reflux. They're all on medications for them and none of them are getting better. None of them get better. And the reason for that is that all these digestive issues, they're all symptoms. They're all your body telling you that something bigger and deeper is going on. And these symptoms are warning. Now, most medications, and I think doctors will agree with this, treat the symptoms. But the symptoms are only an indication. If you treat a symptom and you dumb it down without dealing with the underlying cause, your body just goes, okay, you're not listening to that, I'm going to show you something else. And it gives you another symptom. Then you also have the side effects of those medications, which are, in basic terms, toxicity. And your body has to deal with that as well, which then creates further problems, and then the ill health goes deeper and deeper. And I see people who are on 20 types of medications, they've forgotten what half of them are for. The first 10 are causing side effects, and the second 10 are for the side effects of the first 10. And it becomes a toxic cocktail. Sometimes the doctors don't even understand in the way these medications work together to produce this toxicity. So you need to listen to your body. That's the number one thing. It's telling you, it's giving you indications of what your health's like all the time. As I said, the personal journey went on with the business journey. We tried the vegetarianism, we tried veganism, and I personally just lost weight. IBS didn't get any better at all. My son, Mikey, started to have bigger and bigger meltdowns as he got older. He's 11 years old now. And he also has Tourette's, which is a mild form of epilepsy. And it just got worse and worse and worse. My partner, Melly, has hormonal problems, which again weren't getting any better, progressively getting worse. Now, Melly's an investigator. That's her sort of psychology. She loves to dive deep into things. And she came across Carnivore. And she suggested that we try it, given what she'd read and seen about it and heard. And I was very resistant. I love my vegetables. I didn't see the point of it at all. It went against everything I knew about health, everything I'd ever been taught. They said, well, why don't you just try it for 30 days? And I'm fairly open-minded. So I thought, what is there to lose? So we dove in, went straight into it. 30 days, and I was a grumpy bugger for at least 2 weeks. I almost threw it out the window, but she persuaded me to keep going. End of those 30 days, the migraine headaches had gone. And that was just such a phenomenal wake-up moment for me. Every 2 weeks for 30 years, I'd lose a day every fortnight. That can get expensive when you're self-employed. It doesn't help you get on in life. Tiredness, nausea that went with it, the eye disturbances, and it was just gone. I thought, there's definitely something in this. So carried on, 60 days, 90 days, and now we're 16 months down the line. Migraines have never come back. IBS is 80% improved. Knee pain, which was creaky, and as a physio I know what arthritis is, and it was definitely heading that way, has resolved itself. There's no pain, strength's come back, I have no creaky joints anymore, energy flows constantly all the time. There's no mid-afternoon slump. I used to very regularly take a 20-minute nap in the afternoon. I know it's healthy, I know it releases growth hormone, I just don't feel the need anymore. I was getting up 2 or 3 times a night with the middle-aged man's problem of starting to need to go to the toilet. Doesn't happen anymore. I sleep all the way through. So almost every aspect of my health, which was niggling, which when I look at it from stepping outside in the bigger picture was starting to lead down to more chronic ill health problems, has started to improve and if not resolved. And why would I ever want to go back to feeling the way I did 16 months ago? That's an absolute no-brainer for me. And lots of people talk about, my sugar addiction and how you're going to give up the bread. Well, the truth is, it's not actually you that has the addiction. It's the bacteria and the microbiome in your stomach that wants to feed on that sugar and that carbohydrate. And they have a direct link to your brain. And they just tell your brain, feed me sugar now. So once you resolve those issues, once the pathogenic bacteria disappear, the balance comes back, those cravings disappear. You never think about sugar anymore. You don't want alcohol. Bread's not interesting. Somebody said to me yesterday, but don't you miss fruit? Not in the slightest. And don't ever think about it. I never ever thought I would say that. It's a revelation. And so on the back of all that, in our studies, we came across Natasha Campbell-McBride, and she developed the GAPS Nutritional Protocol, which stands for Gut and Physiology and Gut and Psychology Syndrome. The theory behind it is that most, if not all, chronic inflammatory diseases have their origin in the gut. And if you can heal that, then your body will start to resolve these issues, which again, most of them are symptoms of a gut dysbiosis. Once you start to heal those symptoms, then all those other problems will start to disappear and get less. So I qualified as a GAPS nutritionist roughly about a year ago now, and I've been treating clients with this protocol ever since, and the results are phenomenal. People reducing weight, coming off the diabetes medication, blood pressure coming down, all these signs and symptoms of an underlying inflammation start to resolve, and people are mystified by it. They can't believe the speed with which they get some resolution. Years and years and years of feeling unwell, not quite right, being on multiple medications that don't really resolve it. Within 2-3 weeks, they start to see improvements that they wouldn't ever have imagined. And that's just by changing the diet. The power in that is phenomenal. So what's come about here is that as we've increased and improved our health, and Mikey's meltdowns have gone, his Tourette's is probably 80 to 90% improved. Mellie's resolved all her hormonal issues. Everything is just leveled. All the wee niggles that we had are all disappearing. And we're finding that with more and more and more people, friends that we advise and my clients through the clinic. And on the back of that, I've basically devised a lifestyle assessment I do now. Every patient that comes in, whether it's a physio client, a nutritional client or a hypnotherapy client, they get their entire life analysed, their nutritional status, their health from birth, and even the parents and grandparents. And there is a really strong reason for that. And also the psychological status. And the reason for going right back into medical history is that we're an accumulation over time. Human organism, I'll call it that, we're not just a body, we're a symbiotic set of systems that all work together. In fact, when people realise that we are 80% bacteria, if I were to take 2 piles of DNA and dehydrate you down, now Stephen, to 2 piles, 80% of that DNA would be bacterial. We're only 20% human. We're basically just a vehicle for bacteria. And the majority of what we do in modern life is to napalm those bacteria, from antibiotics to the chemicals we spray in the fields, to the medications that we take, to the antibacterial soaps and sprays and shampoos. And we just put this massive toxic load into our system. And we're phenomenal at coping with it to a level. And then after that, it creates a disease. We just can't cope with that toxic load. So going back to the health of your parents and grandparents, we actually inherit a microbiome from our parents. As the baby's in the uterus in the womb, it's swallowing all the fluid in there, and that starts to seed microbiome. Then you get born, and as you come down the birth canal, again you ingest all your mother's microbiome from the vaginal canal, and that seeds the baby's microbiome. Now that's only good if the mother and father are healthy, because the father also adds his microbiome during sexual intercourse, and that then gets passed on as well. But if your parents have any chronic ill health or a damaged microbiome, you actually inherit that at birth. So you start off from this place of ill health from day one. Add into that scenario the increase in caesarean sections, you don't even get that microbiome seeding. So you're now born without many bacteria, bifidobacteria especially, which is essential for health, and physiological E. coli, which is actually beneficial to us. Not all E. coli is bad. So you're not born with this. So your ability to digest food and create the immune system and get all the nutrition that you need is not there from day one. Now, most babies are bottle fed now. It's just a sad fact. Maybe many babies are weaned straight onto processed food diet. So how can anybody be healthy? If you go even further back than that, if your parents inherited a damaged microbiome from their parents, and they started with many antibiotic treatments over their lifetime, it just gets worse and worse and worse. And what we're seeing in the Western world now is an increase every generation in chronic inflammatory disease, and that is one of the main issues, is that we are born with a damaged microbiome, and it just gets worse and worse and worse over the person's life. Unfortunately, most doctors aren't trained to have any knowledge of this whatsoever. Most doctors get roughly 2 to 5 hours of nutritional training in their entire medical degree. So they're not going to look into nutrition, they're not going to look into diet, they're not going to look back into your past health. They're trained to give medication. And that is driven by pharmaceutical industries who have a very big interest in making profit, unfortunately. Now, if doctors were to step back a little bit and look at the bigger picture of health and realise that people, myself included, because I know through experience, can actually have some sovereignty and control over the health by making changes in their own life through lifestyle, that would stop them needing the medication in the first place. It's not to say that every medication is terrible. In a very acute setting where you need to damp down symptoms very quickly, they can be fantastic. And it's the long-term medication that causes most people's problems. Your detox organs, your liver, your kidneys, your lungs and your skin are designed to pull toxins out of your bloodstream, out of your system, and get rid of them from the body. And we do that through our skin, through our sweat. The lungs actually breathe out toxins. They're a very big detox organ. The liver and the kidneys, and we obviously excrete toxins that way as well. And they're super efficient, and they're designed to take these small amounts of toxins that we come into contact with and get rid of them quickly. But if we have a river of toxins in our body, they're overloaded completely. They actually can't do their job properly. We get a backup of these toxins. Because they're sitting in the body, they start to create the ill health. The other side effect of this is that by having this damaged gut microbiome, you actually start to open up little holes in the gut lining. And that's because the pathogenic bacteria, which are dominant in a gut dysbiosis, produce toxins, but they also attach the gut lining, some of them, and open up these little holes. Now, the problem for that is that we're designed to have a sealed gut lining that doesn't allow big particles through or any toxins. It has a lining on it that's protective. Once this is gone, undigested food and toxins then flow into the bloodstream. Your body sees this as an invader and attacks it. And that creates these toxic effects that people are experiencing all the time. Now, the other side effect of that is that the proteins in the undigested food are seen as an invader as well, and they're attacked, and your body creates an immune response to that. Some of these proteins mimic the proteins we actually have in our bodies. So then, as the immune system's looking around, it starts to see these same proteins in our body, and it attacks them. That creates autoimmunity. And again, there's a massive rise in those. Rheumatoid arthritis, all the autoimmune diseases, cancer especially. They're rising and rising and rising. And one of the main reasons for them is that people's bodies are toxic because of what they put in and the environment that we live in. So that sounds terrible. It sounds quite depressing. The upside to this is if you actually start to pay attention to what's around you and what you're putting in your mouth and your body, then you can start to have some control over your health and take it in the right direction. One of the reasons that carnivore is such a healthy diet, and I mean that goes against everything we know about diet and health. As I said before, I had to rewire my brain completely to understand all this. And it is very difficult because all the media is telling you a certain thing. All the standard cultural narrative around what's healthy to eat tells you a certain thing. And the way your subconscious works is once it believes something, it becomes a truth for you. If somebody tells you that your truth is wrong, you really don't like that. It's because we all have an ego. We all have an identity that we bring into the world. We build it over time. We're not born as we are. We build this persona. If somebody tells you that your identity is wrong, you're going to fight against that with everything you have. Even though a little bit of your mind might know it's not right, you don't want to give up who you are. That's one of the reasons that many people who are chronically ill can't understand or agree that they can have control over their own health. And the human body is basically made up of protein and fat and some collagen. Well, what are the best sources of that for the human body? Animal products. They're the most easily digestible, most easily assimilated into the body, and they are the healthiest things we can put in. Plants are designed as detox foods. We're certainly omnivores, but I would say strategic omnivores. We have the ability to input and digest plants, but in small amounts because they have toxic effects as well. Plants can't run away. They can't fight, they can't hide. So they have to protect themselves, and they do that by creating toxic chemicals inside themselves that are going to create a nasty taste for one and some nasty symptoms for the other. Now, our bodies can cope with small amounts of those only if our digestive system is very robust and very resilient. And I would hazard a guess that that's very few people in the Western world. And they're also detox foods. So as a plant goes into you, many of the particles and substances in plants grab onto toxins and take them out of your body. That's actually a good thing. There's nothing bad with that at all. But if you're going to eat plants constantly all the time, your body's going to be in a permanent detox state. So you're going to feel fantastic to start with, especially if you've been on a processed food diet to begin with. And I've experienced that. Your energy comes up, you feel great. At some point, your body gets to the point where it doesn't need to detox anymore. And then you're fasting. And you can't fast forever. Otherwise, all your nutrition is going to disappear and your body will start to use itself. And that's one of the reasons I started to lose weight, lose muscle mass, and just feel generally unwell. You need to feed your body at some point. And we think the digestive system of the human is made to digest protein and fat in its infancy as it goes into the body, especially the gut, which is very high acidity, hydrochloric acid level almost, is designed to digest protein and fat. There's not many bacteria in there. In fact, one of the commonest complaints I get in the clinic is reflux. And most doctors will tell the clients that you've got too much acid in your stomach, so we're going to give you something like omeprazole, possibly, that's going to damp that acid down, stop the reflux, and you'll feel better. Funnily enough, the underlying cause of reflux is low stomach acidity. And what that does is it allows the bacteria to come up from the intestine into the gut and start to populate it. They then populate the sphincter at the top of the stomach, and they stop it working properly. And the undigested food and the acid is then allowed to come up into the gullet, and that's what creates the burning effect. So if you then damp down the acidity with the omeprazole, your stomach then produces more acid to try and counteract it, and it becomes a vicious cycle of medication and getting worse, medication and getting worse. It's a really simple problem to sort out. All you need to do is increase the stomach acidity. And there's certain medications, certain supplements you can take for that, which mimic the stomach enzymes. One of the best and one of the easiest that we can make ourselves is a thing called meat stock. And it's the foundation of the GAPS nutritional protocol. Lots of people confuse it with bone broth. Bone broth is a very long simmered product which is getting everything out of the bones, but it can also be quite high in histamine. So for anybody that's got any allergy type problems, bone broth can be quite aggravating for that because of the high levels of histamine because of the very long simmering time. A meat stock is a completely different animal. It uses the cartilage joints with the meat on. You might take a whole chicken. You would simmer it for 2 hours. Just put salt in. For slightly redder meat, something like lamb or beef, it might be 3 to 4 hours. But it's a slow cooking time that's important. It's very low in histamine. And the healthy part of it is the collagen. Out of that cartilage part of the joints, and if you think way back to the past, people would be putting chicken feet and pig's trotters into their soup. That's where all the collagen is, and it sucks it out into the liquid and then suspends it. And as you ingest that, it's in a form your body can just use straight away. And most of your stomach lining is made up of collagen. So if you start to heal that lining, and this collagen also has many other macronutrients in it, going to help your stomach to heal, drive down the bacterial growth there, take it back down to where it should be in the intestine, and your stomach will start to digest and the acid will decrease. So you can see that not everything we know is necessarily the truth. How do we find the truth? Well, investigation. Going to people who have the knowledge to teach you. There's 3 types of people in the world. There's people like do things themselves, which is great, but they take forever. They take a very long time. There's also people that just sit around and wait for things to happen. Well, it'll never happen. If that's the case. Third type of person is realise that there's many people in the world that know what they need to know. They're called mentors. So you get a mentor who's already done everything you want to do, has achieved where you want to be, and you ask them to teach you. What that does is it super speeds up your progress. They've already made all the mistakes. You don't need to. They can tell you, don't do this, don't do that, just do this. And it will speed up your progress. So the key in all this is to find somebody who has the knowledge that you need, ask them to help you. And that's how you go forward. So everybody who's suffering with chronic disease, things like omeprazole, anxiety and depression, which funnily enough is linked into the gut as well, because many of the neurotransmitters are actually produced in the gut, serotonin and dopamine. So if you don't have the right bacterial content in your gut, you can't actually produce serotonin and dopamine, and they are the happy hormones. So you can't be happy. And that's interesting. Another side effect of many people who heal the gut is they just feel happy and calm. And that's a carnivore especially can create that, because suddenly you're producing all these neurotransmitters are flooding into the brain, and they just create this mood lift. Especially for people who've been on antidepressants for years and years, which just dull everything. I think many people recognize that feeling of brain fog, not only for being on medication, but just from the fact that your gut can't produce what it needs to. So by healing that, everything starts to go into balance. Your body starts to heal itself. People see changes really quickly, but the long-term healing can take 18 months to 2 years, even 5 years in some cases if you're very, 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 very ill. So you need to realize that the body doesn't turn things over at super speed. It takes time. Healing is a process of going through different stages of healing, and healing for every tissue is the same, has to go through the same stages. For some tissues it's faster, for some tissues it takes longer. And that all depends on your nutritional status and the ill health that you have to start with. So all I can say really is the only proof is in the pudding. If anybody listening is in a place where they're not feeling right and they want to take their health into their own hands, then action is the key. Taking small steps in the right direction. You don't have to jump in straight away. Compounding of actions creates a huge effect later on. And action is the only way forward, really. And I know from my life and my experience what a difference it can make, and how I feel now compared to 18 months, 2 years ago is absolutely chalk and cheese. I don't feel like the same person at all.
Brilliant. Simon, if I could give you a round of applause, I would. That was absolutely fabulous. I mean, one of the things, I don't know if you've seen any of my interviews, but I don't interrupt ever. I just let people say. And I mean, that was so good. That was almost scripted. I know it isn't scripted, but that was just absolutely incredible. I'm going to just pick up on what I do get some pedants on my channel, and I'm going to clear something up there because I have this as well. Because Simon did say you can get some remarkable results really quickly, but sometimes things take a long time, and it doesn't sound like that's, they can go together, those symptoms, those terms. But that is true. Many people get off their diabetic meds, they lower their blood pressure in 3 weeks. But when you look at long-term adaptations, that can take a while, and mindset and so many different things. But initially, you can get onto carnivore, and within 30 days, it proves the concept that you can get better. And I want to pick up on a couple of things, if you don't mind, because you said very eloquently about if you hear something enough, you start to believe it. And 15 years ago, when I started as a specialist practitioner in diabetes and obesity, on the diabetic side, everybody had been told this is a chronic progressive disease. You will never reverse it. Everybody. That's what used to happen. And of course, now we know that there are, I would literally say over 1 million, at least, people online that have reversed their type 2 diabetes. But getting people to believe it is possible in those days was very difficult. Now we've got tons and tons of proof. And I think it's really helpful to have places like YouTube and Rumble and, Spotify to have these success stories. You've got one, your wife, your children, and I think you said something like 40,000 clients over 30 years. So if you are really reluctant to try carnivore, you have no reason because you're listening to this possibly either because you like the information or secondly because you're trying to improve something like migraines, to reduce those. I think what you said about the gut microbiome and leaky gut is possibly one of the best explanations I've ever heard. And I've been doing a lot of these for a long, long time. So I appreciate how clear you were with that. I think I just want to say to people, if you haven't seen Simon before, he's quite new on social media. So that was stunningly good, wasn't it, for someone that's new? And there will be links in the description to be able to sort of contact him if you want to. Do you feel the medications, you were very magnanimous about medications, but do you feel that medications are just too quickly prescribed for the average person?
Yes, is the short answer to that. And I think the main problem is that lifestyle is not looked into as a go-to straight away. And if more doctors could see that the knowledge is out there and that majority of people don't understand about nutrition anymore. I see that time and time again in my clinic. Clients come in, they actually don't understand why they're on the medication to start with. They don't even know the names of the medication and they don't know what they're for. And they also don't understand the side effects. And I think most people, if they were given the option of, if you were to change your diet in this way and start eating this food, you might see improvements. Or we can give you this pill that may give you some improvement, but is going to cause some side effects as well. I think if people had that explained to them in the doctor's surgery on day one, most people would probably go for the nutritional change because they know there's not going to be no toxic side effects and they're in control of it then. I mean, a medication is something that is it's a single nutrient, possibly, you might say, because all medication comes from plants or the natural world to a certain extent. All natural remedies, if you look to holistic health, they have many substances in them. And so if you're to eat a plant for a medicinal purpose, that plant would contain a substance that would have an effect, the beneficial effect, the medicinal effect, but it will also have substances that allow your body to absorb it and also help your body to get rid of it. Your body will recognize that as a natural thing and will work with it. Most medication have isolated one substance and then produce it synthetically. So your body doesn't actually understand what it is. It doesn't recognize it as something that should be in the body, so it doesn't really know what to do with it. And most toxins that aren't understood by the body get stored for later. They get stored in the fat. They don't actually leave your body. And at some point, they're likely to get released and then have a toxic effect. And that's the side effects of medication. So nothing we put in our body should have side effects over the long term. Everything we put in our body should have possible short-term detox effects, have a long-term beneficial effect. And that's where the power of nutrition is. And I said earlier about the origin of food. We used to, in the past, in community, and one of the big things for me is connection. I think connection's been lost in our modern Western world on all sorts of different levels. People in smaller communities used to be connected to each other in many ways. And one of them was that they would all produce things. Produce animals, produce vegetables, produce fruit. And people would know where the food came from. They would know exactly what went into it, and it would travel a short distance. And it would also be seasonal. And there'd be feasting and there'd be fasting. It's part of the natural cycle of life. Seasonal food in the past would be eaten for a short period of time because it was available then. The people might store it, possibly preserve it through fermentation, which would have a triple beneficial effect of breaking down some of the fibre, which is actually not that great for your gut. Most people say, but what about fibre? We don't need fibre in any way, shape or form for our health. It can actually be quite damaging for people who have gut problems. The fermentation would also denature many of the toxins, the plants that would cause us problems. And the third thing was it would build a massive, powerful store of beneficial bacteria in this food. And that would last people over the winter in what we call the fasting time, where food wasn't all that available. There wouldn't be plentiful animals about. They would have to hunt much further ranging, and the stored food for the winter be what they eat. So people would go through periods of a glut of food where they'd stuff themselves, especially before winter, to build a layer of fat to survive. And then there'd be fasting periods where food wasn't quite so available. And in those fasting periods, the body would detox itself. It would dig in, it would get rid of all the toxins and the parasites and the things it didn't need and get rid of them. And these cycles were healthy. And humans in the past moved in cycles, seasonal cycles. Now we have food all the time, out of season. It travels thousands of miles around the world. It's picked unripe and it's sprayed with chemicals. I defy anybody to tell me there's anything healthy in those four. That's not the healthy food. Our bodies aren't designed to eat everything all the time, sprayed with chemicals and unripe. It's just not good. I mean, we've come to expect that because of the abundance of everything. And that's something else that I've been thinking about recently is scarcity. Scarcity is a principle that's really important for humans, and that works on many levels. Scarcity builds an expectation. So if you think back to when you were a child, you probably got a comic through the door once a week. There were 2 channels on the TV. You waited for things. It built anticipation, and there was an excitement. Now people have everything all the time. There's zero excitement. There's zero anticipation. Your reaction gets dulled. And this is the same on every level. So in your body physiology, the reaction to things gets dulled if you have it all the time. And this basically explains the cause of diabetes. The insulin glucose cycle, it's a very sensitive mechanism. We only need 1 teaspoon of sugar or glucose in our system in any one day, and the liver can produce that on its own perfectly well. And we shove sugar in, so your body doesn't want that sugar in the bloodstream. So the pancreas spurts out insulin, grabs it, takes it out of the bloodstream, and it stores it in fat. That's super sensitive and it's very quick. It wants to get it out. If you keep putting sugar in and sugar in and sugar in and sugar in, eventually the pancreas starts to get worn out. It can't keep up anymore. So it just goes, well, I'm just not doing this anymore. And that causes what we call insulin resistance. That's due to overabundance of sugar. Our system is designed to deal with a scarcity and an occasional bit of sugar. Same principle. The system is dulled. The reaction is dulled.
Yeah.
Scarcity is really important at all levels for the human being. That comes round to one of my other themes, is our connection to the natural world. We can't disconnect from it. We're connected to the soil. We're connected to the planet. So if we damage the soil and the planet, we are basically damaging ourselves, because that's where we get our nutrition from. That's where we get our microbiome from. That's where we get our health from. So we need to really pay attention to where our food comes from. Try and culture relationships with as many local producers as you can. And it's incredible how many there are around you. Just because you don't know them doesn't mean they're not there. Once you start to investigate, there's lots of small producers that really care about their food. They know what goes into it. Once you start to look down that tunnel, you start to build this network of people who are all working together for the benefit of each other's health. And that's, I think, the way forward for most people now. If we want to get out of this cycle of disease and chronic inflammation, we need to look locally, rebuild the connection with people and to our food. And that's the only way forward that we're going to build our health.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I've actually just done a video with the authors of Why Vegans Have Smaller Brains and How Cows Can Reverse Climate Change. It's a great book. And within literally 30 seconds of uploading it to YouTube, it was flagged by YouTube, because this information they don't want you to know. There is a profit element to it, especially with the pharmaceuticals. As you know, I like to be impartial in as many things as I say. A pharmaceutical business is a business, and they have an obligation to shareholders to make as much money as possible. That's written into articles. So they're there to make money, and it's quite legal. We just need to get the information out there that maybe that isn't the first port of call, and give people the information about raising their own livestock if that's possible. If they have to, if the wherewithal or if they're in a city, get the best possible food they can from the best possible sources. And I think it's really great that you tapped into the sort of the gut microbiome and a few other things about your past and your grandparents and all that sort of stuff. But the more you get into this, there's so many reasons that your body's doing what it does. For instance, you mentioned bread is really tough for people to give up. That's because for many reasons. And there's a thing called gliadin, which is a protein that hooks up to the opioid receptors. So it feels like the game's stacked against you. But when you have the knowledge, you can take a step back and work out what's best for you. And I think that's you were very good about talking about when people go vegan or vegetarian, how initially they can feel better. I'm not anti-vegan or anti-vegetarian, because anyone that's thinking about their health is already sort of 90% ahead of most people. So anyway, Simon, that is brilliant. I tend not to do more than 40 minutes. So I want to thank you. Did you enjoy coming on?
I did indeed, yes. I could easily talk for double that. So it's knowing when to stop is the hard thing.